The morning sun cast long shadows across the cracked asphalt of Jefferson Elementary School in Detroit, Michigan. The building stood like a wounded soldier, its red brick facade weathered by decades of harsh winters and budget cuts. Paint peeled from window frames, and a section of the chain-link fence leaned at a dangerous angle, held up more by hope than structural integrity. Inside classroom 3B, 32 third graders sat crammed into a space designed for 20. Sarah Mitchell, a 43-year-old teacher with 15 years of experience, stood before them with a smile that had become her armor against exhaustion. Her cardigan was fraying at the elbows, and she'd worn the same 3 outfits in rotation for the past 2 years. Teaching wasn't supposed to be about survival, but that's what it had become. "All right, everyone," Sarah announced, her voice cutting through the morning chatter. "Please take out your math workbooks." A collective groan rippled through the room. Little Marcus Johnson raised his hand hesitantly. "Miss Mitchell, I don't have one. Remember? You said we'd share." Sarah's heart sank, though her expression remained cheerful. "That's right, Marcus. You'll partner with Destiny today." She'd been promising new workbooks for 3 months, but the school budget had been slashed again. The previous week, she'd spent $80 of her own money on basic supplies, money that should have gone toward her daughter's dental appointment. Before we continue with this incredible story, we'd love to know, where in the world are you watching from? Drop your city and country in the comments below. And if you're new here, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss our next inspiring story. Trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. The door to the classroom suddenly opened, and Principal Barbara Henderson appeared, her face flushed with an expression Sarah couldn't quite read, somewhere between panic and excitement. Behind her stood a man who seemed entirely out of place in their humble school. He was tall, perhaps in his mid-40s, with striking features and dark, intelligent eyes that seemed to absorb every detail of the room. His suit was impeccable, a charcoal gray that probably cost more than Sarah made in 2 months. But it wasn't his appearance that commanded attention. It was the quiet confidence he carried, the kind that came from someone who had navigated boardrooms and built empires. "Miss Mitchell," Principal Henderson said, slightly breathless, "this is Mr. Khalid Al-Rahman. He's visiting our school today." Khalid extended his hand, his grip firm but not overwhelming. "Please, just Khalid. I hope I'm not interrupting." "Not at all," Sarah replied, though 32 pairs of curious eyes had already abandoned their workbooks. "We're just starting our math lesson." Khalid's gaze swept across the classroom, taking in the water-stained ceiling tiles, the mismatched desks, the singular computer in the corner that hadn't worked in 18 months. His expression remained neutral, but something shifted in his eyes, a flash of recognition perhaps, or memory. "May I observe?" he asked. For the next 40 minutes, Khalid sat in a chair far too small for his frame, watching intently as Sarah performed what could only be described as educational magic. She taught multiplication using hand-clapping games. She turned a lesson about fractions into a story about sharing pizza. When the ancient projector refused to work, she drew diagrams on the whiteboard with markers she'd bought herself, some of which were running dry. The children were engaged, laughing, learning, not because of the resources available, but because Sarah Mitchell refused to let poverty steal their education. She moved through the room like a conductor leading an orchestra, knowing exactly which student needed encouragement, which one required a firmer hand, which one was struggling silently. During a group activity, Khalid approached a cluster of students. "What are you working on?" he asked Marcus, who looked up with wide eyes. "We're trying to figure out how many apples 3 people would get if they had to share 18 apples equally," Marcus explained. "But it's hard because we can only imagine the apples. We don't have manipulatives." "Manipulatives?" Khalid asked. "Little objects we can use to count and visualize," Sarah interjected, kneeling beside them. "We used to have sets, but they wore out years ago. Now we improvise." She gestured to a collection of broken crayons they'd repurposed as counting tools. Khalid's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. He pulled out his phone and typed something quickly, before returning his attention to the children. "So, 18 apples divided by 3 people. What's your strategy?" For the rest of the morning, Khalid moved from classroom to classroom, his presence causing both excitement and nervousness among the staff. He visited Mrs. Chen's 5th grade class, where students shared textbooks because there weren't enough to go around. He saw Mr. Thompson's science lab, which hadn't had functioning Bunsen burners in 3 years. He sat in the cafeteria where children ate lunch, noting how some students pocketed extra crackers to take home, a sign that school lunch might be their most reliable meal. By lunchtime, Khalid had requested a meeting with Principal Henderson and the teaching staff. They gathered in the cramped teacher's lounge, where a donated coffee maker gurgled its last breath and inspirational posters with peeling corners tried valiantly to maintain morale. "I want to understand," Khalid began, his voice measured but intense. "Why a school in one of America's great cities looks like this? Why are teachers sharing supplies? Why are children sitting on broken chairs?" Principal Henderson sighed, her exhaustion evident. "Mr. Al-Rahman, we serve one of the poorest districts in Detroit. 87% of our students qualify for free lunch. Property taxes are low because property values are low. State funding has been cut repeatedly. We do the best we can with what we have, which is almost nothing," added Robert Thompson, the science teacher, his voice bitter with frustration. "I've written 17 grant proposals this year. 17. I got funding for one. $300 to buy test tubes." Sarah spoke up quietly. "We're not here for sympathy, Mr. Al-Rahman. We knew what we were signing up for when we chose to teach here. These children deserve every opportunity, and we'll find ways to give it to them, even if it means sacrificing our own resources." "How much do you spend on your classroom?" Khalid asked her directly. Sarah hesitated. "That's not relevant." "How much?" "Last year? About $3,000, my own money." She said it matter-of-factly, as if this was normal, expected. "For books, supplies, snacks for kids who come hungry, a coat for Marcus when winter hit because his family couldn't afford one." The room fell silent. Khalid stood and walked to the window, looking out at the playground where children played on rusted equipment. When he turned back, his expression was unreadable. "I grew up in poverty," he said suddenly, his voice carrying a weight that demanded attention. "Not here. In a small village outside Riyadh. My father died when I was 7. My mother cleaned houses to feed us. I went to school in a building not unlike this one. Concrete floors, no windows in summer heat, one teacher for 60 children." He paused, his eyes distant with memory. "But I had one teacher, Mr. Hamza, who believed I could be more than my circumstances. He stayed after school to tutor me. He bought me books with money he didn't have. He told me education was the door to a different life." Khalid's voice grew thick with emotion. "When I earned a scholarship to university, he cried. He died 2 years later, never knowing that the boy he'd helped would eventually build a fortune in technology and real estate." Sarah felt tears prick her eyes. Around the room, other teachers nodded, understanding the profound bond between a struggling student and a dedicated teacher. "I came to America 30 years ago with $300 and a dream," Khalid continued. "I built my first company in a garage. I failed twice before I succeeded. Today my companies are worth billions. But I never forgot, Mr. Hamza. I never forgot what it feels like to be hungry and still expected to learn, to be brilliant, but invisible, because you're poor." He pulled out his phone again, scrolling through something before looking up. "I've spent the morning researching Jefferson Elementary. Your test scores are remarkable considering your resources. Your students, statistically, shouldn't be performing this well, but they are, because of you." Principal Henderson straightened. "We do our best. Your best is extraordinary, but it shouldn't be this hard." Khalid's voice grew firmer, more decisive. "I'm establishing a foundation, and Jefferson Elementary will be its first project. Full funding, whatever you need. New books, technology, building repairs, supplies, a complete transformation." The room erupted. Teachers looked at each other in disbelief. Sarah felt her hands trembling. "Wait," said Michelle Rodriguez, the art teacher. "We've heard promises before. Politicians visit, photographers take pictures, and nothing changes." "I'm not a politician," Khalid replied. "I'm a businessman, and I keep my commitments. My legal team is already drawing up paperwork. Within 60 days, this school will have a $3 million operating budget. Within 6 months, every structural problem will be addressed. Within a year, this will be a model school that others study." Sarah found her voice. "Why? Why us? There are thousands of schools like ours." Khalid met her eyes. "Because when I watched you teach this morning, I saw Mr. Hamza. I saw the same dedication, the same refusal to accept that poverty should limit potential. And I realized I've been building wealth for 30 years but not doing enough with it. That changes today." The tears came then, not just from Sarah, but from educators who had fought too long with too little. Years of frustration, of watching talented students struggle with inadequate resources, of personal sacrifice that went unrecognized. It all surfaced in that moment. But Khalid wasn't finished. "There's more. I'm establishing a teacher support fund. Every educator at Jefferson Elementary will receive a $10,000 annual stipend to use as you see fit for your classrooms and students. You shouldn't have to spend your own salary on basic supplies." Robert Thompson stood abruptly, overwhelmed. I don't know what to say." "Say you'll keep teaching," Khalid replied. "Say you'll keep believing in these children. Because they need you more than they need new buildings or computers. Those are tools. You are the architects of their future. The meeting ended with embraces, with tears, with a hope that felt almost dangerous after so many disappointments. As teachers filed out, already imagining the possibilities, Khalid asked Sarah to stay behind. "Miss Mitchell, may I ask you something personal?" Sarah nodded, still processing everything. "Why do you do this? You could teach in a suburban school, make the same salary, and not spend a penny of your own money. Why stay here?" Sarah looked toward the hallway where her students' artwork lined the walls. Self-portraits drawn with whatever materials they could find, brilliant and expressive despite their limitations. "Because Marcus deserves the same chance you got," she said simply. "So does Destiny, and Miguel, and every child in this building. They didn't choose to be born into poverty, but they're choosing to show up every day, to learn, to dream." "How can I choose any less?" Khalid smiled, and for the first time, it reached his eyes. Mr. Hamza would have said the same thing. "Thank you for being who you are." Over the following weeks, Jefferson Elementary transformed. Construction crews arrived to repair the roof and replace windows. Boxes of new textbooks filled the hallways, enough for every student to have their own. Technology companies donated tablets and laptops. The computer lab, long abandoned, became a state-of-the-art learning center. But the most profound changes were harder to see. Teachers no longer arrived exhausted from second jobs. Students no longer shared books or sat on broken furniture. The cafeteria expanded its menu, ensuring no child went hungry. An on-site counselor was hired to support students dealing with trauma. An after-school program provided tutoring and enrichment. Khalid visited monthly, not with cameras or publicity, but quietly, sitting in classrooms and talking with students. He established mentorship programs connecting his employees with Jefferson students interested in technology and business. He funded college savings accounts for every student in the school. One afternoon, 6 months after his first visit, Khalid found Sarah in her classroom after school. The room had been completely renovated. New desks, a smart board, shelves lined with books. But Sarah was still there, long after dismissal, preparing lessons. "You don't have to stay so late anymore," Khalid observed. "You have resources now." Sarah looked up, smiling. "I know, but I'm not staying because I have to. I'm staying because I want to. That's the difference you've given us. The freedom to teach for the right reasons, not just to survive." "I've received calls from other philanthropists," Khalid said. "People who want to replicate this model in other schools. Your success here is inspiring people. It's not my success. It's ours. Yours, mine, the other teachers, the students. That's what makes it work." Khalid pulled out an envelope. "I have something for you. It's a scholarship fund I've established in Mr. Hamza's name. It will send 20 students from Jefferson Elementary to college every year, fully funded. I'd like you to help select the recipients. You see potential in children that others might miss." Sarah took the envelope with shaking hands, tears streaming down her face. "I don't know what to say." "Say you'll keep being the teacher these children need. That's all I ask." As Khalid left that day, walking past students excitedly using new science equipment and reading in a renovated library, he felt something he hadn't experienced in years, a sense that his wealth finally had meaning beyond numbers in accounts and properties on ledgers. That evening, in his downtown Detroit office overlooking the city, Khalid made a decision. He would expand the foundation, partnering with 10 more schools in struggling districts. Jefferson Elementary wasn't just a project, it was a promise that poverty didn't have to be destiny, that one person who remembers their own struggles can change hundreds of lives, that teachers like Sarah Mitchell and Mr. Hamza were the true heroes, and they deserved every resource available. The story of the Arab billionaire who walked into a school spread through Detroit and beyond. News outlets covered the transformation. Other business leaders visited, inspired to take action in their own communities. But the most important story wasn't told by reporters. It was told by Marcus, who received his first A in math and dreamed of becoming an engineer. By Destiny, who discovered a love of reading when she finally had her own books. By every child at Jefferson Elementary who learned that their zip code didn't define their potential. Sarah Mitchell continued teaching, as she always had, but now with the resources to match her dedication. Every morning, she walked into a school that looked different but felt the same, filled with children who deserved every opportunity, and educators determined to give it to them. And sometimes, when Khalid visited and sat in the back of her classroom, watching her work her educational magic with proper tools and resources. He would think of Mr. Hamza. He would remember a small classroom in Saudi Arabia, the smell of chalk dust and hope, and a teacher who believed a poor boy could change his life. The cycle had come full circle. The boy who received help became the man who gave it. The teacher who sacrificed became the beneficiary of someone who understood sacrifice. And in a struggling school in Detroit, dozens of children learned that their dreams were valid, their potential unlimited, and their futures bright, not because a billionaire wrote a check, but because people believed in them enough to invest in their success. That was the real story. Not about money, though money helped, but about recognition that teachers are heroes, that children are treasures, and that investing in education is investing in humanity's best possible future. As Sarah locked her classroom that night, she paused to look at a new poster on the wall. Khalid had it commissioned, a quote from his teacher, Mr. Hamza, translated from Arabic. A society's wealth is not measured by its buildings, but by how it treats its teachers and children. Below it, in smaller letters, Sarah had added her own words. And sometimes, when we're lucky, someone remembers both. The lights of Jefferson Elementary glowed warmly in the Detroit evening, a beacon of hope in a neighborhood that had known too much struggle. Inside those walls, possibility lived. And tomorrow, 32 third graders would return to classroom 3B, ready to learn, ready to dream, and ready to become whoever they were meant to be, because finally, someone had given them, and their teacher, the resources to make those dreams real.